But some people still think it's okay to take drugs and drive. Police have the authority, the ability, and the tools to determine if drivers are impaired by legal or illegal drugs. And because drug-impaired drivers can pose just as great a risk as drunk drivers, they face the same penalties, like the loss of their driver's license, a criminal record, fines, and more. A message from the RCMP, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, and Arrive Alive Drive.
Hey everybody, how are you doing? It's your boy DC, Thursday night host of Rogers Out of the Fog.
Right, you kind of got to make your own fun.
Yeah.
Which was a transition for me, going into the morning show here.
Proud. Keep doing the amazing work, will you?
They're learning about how to hire people.
20 years of local matter, so join me every Thursday night and see what's going on in the fog.
This is Rogers TV.
Welcome back to Gale Force Wins Season 2 on Rogers TV, where we explore the journeys of interesting people in and around Newfoundland, Labrador, Canada, and the rest of the world. Here we are. This is Gale Force Wins. My name is Gerry Carew. With me is Leslie Penney. I met Leslie probably 25 years ago, maybe 30 actually, when you were just starting in the business. You'll tell us how long that's been. One thing I want to mention is that this is a new studio, and I apologize to you, Leslie. You've been here for almost 35 minutes. This is the first time we've actually recorded in here. We got new microphones, new curtains, new lighting. So it took me a little bit of time to figure it all out. But we've been having a great chat, and I think years ago, that's one thing about you I noticed, that you were very open and welcoming, and I love that about business people, because frankly, if you're open, then people that are working or selling to you will do better. Anyway, enough talking for me. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Leslie Penney, as you know, and I'm a broker owner at East Coast Mortgage Brokers. I've been in the business now for a little over 15 years, and it's all I know at this point.
We're going to get into that, but I'm going to take you back even further. Prior to recording, you told me a little bit about your growing up. Tell us where you grew up and a little bit about how that shaped you.
Yeah, good question. So I'm a Bayman originally. I grew up in Kings Cove, a little small community on the Bonavista Peninsula. I'd say there's probably about 60 people left there now at most. My family fished and farmed, I guess, small time. So I grew up on the water in the summers and that sort of thing. And like I said, my father was a fisherman, and he took an early retirement when I was 15 or so. And said, listen, it's yours if you want it. And my brother was fishing with him at the time, and I was like, no, he can have it. I wanted to go to university. Wanted to get a business degree. Oddly enough, I think my plan at the time was own a restaurant. Realized that wasn't for me either. And I got my commerce degree at Mon, and I got right in the mortgage business right away.
So tell me about that time on the water. Gale Force Winds has spent some time in the Navy, as you know, and we've been on various ships. What is it like? I can't picture where Kings Cove is exactly. Is it totally open to the ocean?
Yeah, it's a pretty open bay. Yeah. So if you look at our harbor, you can see right down through to the Cape and Bonavista, essentially.
Right. So does the heavy seas wash up there?
Yeah, the sea can get pretty rough. Like I said, where we fished, you have lobster pots that after a good storm, there wasn't much left.
I got to say this, your dad's still alive?
Yes.
Yeah. What's his name? Cyril, if you're watching this, I have deep respect for anyone who makes a living on the sea. In fact, I'd love to come out and sit with you and chat about life as a fisherman, because you know what? Alan and I haven't actually done that. We haven't talked to anyone yet about that. But it's such an incredibly difficult way to make a living, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, historically, it always has been. I'm sure the business has changed over the years, and it's different now than when my father was at it, no doubt. But
so what about that upbringing would have served you well to become a mortgage broker?
I think it's a work ethic from dawn to dusk. You're always at something, and like fishing was one thing. He always had some farm animals, so we've always had cows and things in between. So if you weren't fishing, you were cutting hay, or we had a strawberry farm at one point, so we were dealing with that. So I remember one summer, so I had like a student summer job.
Yeah.
I was fishing, we were at the crab and stuff, and then we also had the strawberry farm. So we were picking berries and doing all that, and then at hay, and then probably at boat. So it was a busy time, but I think a lot of that's what shaped it for me, because from dawn to dusk, and there was no stop. And I guess as a teenager, there's times you're like, man, this sucks.
So talk a little bit about your schooling, grade school, high school. You're in a mortgage business. Is math something that you excelled at, or?
No, I mean, I've done well in school. I mean, in all disciplines, I guess. That was always important to me, for sure. And like I said, I never really end up with the plan to be in the mortgage business. Honestly, when I went through a commerce program, my wife actually graduated the program the same time, and the plan was to move to Toronto. I had got a sister up there. Yep. Moved to Toronto, obviously business degrees, and hopefully get a job on Bay Street and go that route. But my mom was sick with cancer at the time, and I didn't want to go too far from home. So we stuck around for a bit, and I saw the opportunity to come up as a broker, and I was like, why not? Kind of fits my business. I always had that entrepreneurial side of me that I didn't want to do like the accounting piece or anything like that. I wanted to be in sales, finance of some sort. It was a perfect fit.
Not to get too personal, but my dad died of cancer when I was 14. So did your mom?
Yeah, she passed away. Yeah, I was 25.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Not easy, is it?
That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, you look at it, and I see other people that are my age and much older as have both their parents, and I kind of wonder sometimes, of course, what that's like. But, I'm thankful on the other side that I wasn't 5 or 6, so.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'll tell you for me is that it shaped me. It's the most difficult thing that ever happened. Watching my mom struggle, that was all very difficult. But I also will say, and this, not to sound weird, but it was certainly an education. You see that life's an incredibly beautiful thing, but you can also see how it can go bad.
Yeah.
And I personally have worked every day to make every day the fullest, and it was the gift that my dad gave me, and probably didn't even know it. Dying. Right. So I don't know if that's shaped you at all in your experience with losing your mom.
It's a perspective for sure. I mean, you never know at any point in your life anything can happen, and I think it's a daily reminder, to be honest, especially in our world where, as a business owner and as a broker, every day is a work day. And really, you got to put that in perspective, because you don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. So it's a fine balance, I find, between working all the time and making sure you're working enough that you're able to survive and still enjoy life, because you don't know when it's going to change.
Well, you're right. And I think the entrepreneurial endeavor can be a real challenge, as you know. You have livelihoods at stake. We'll get into that in a second, but I find the balance difficult. In fact, I wanted to slow down in the pandemic, and I even articulated that to many people. And then this podcast happened, and it's just been a whirlwind. But I worry sometimes, Leslie, that I have a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I really have a baby in this business that's also part and parcel of the whole thing, right? So how do you balance all of that with where you are?
It's a great question. It's something I still struggle with, but I try to work on all the time. And again, we've got a 5.5-year-old little boy, and I mean, he just started kindergarten, and everyone said that once they start school, look out, because it just goes so much quicker. And I can see that, because even the past few months have been a blur. But I think it's really taken time for me to spend time, obviously, with him and my wife and family and so on, and not getting caught up in the fact that you need to be at work all the time. I mean, I did. Like I said, my wife is the same. We, before having a child, like, we worked and that was it, and that's all we knew. And it's, well, why not just work instead of just lazing around or doing whatever, right? But it certainly changes when you have kids, because again, it's going so quick, and you want to cherish those moments as much as you can.
Some balance, though.
It's tough, and like you said, when in our business where there's deadlines and other clients' needs, it's not like, oh, well, you can do that tomorrow if the deadline's today, or whatever the case may be. So it's a tough balance between trying to make sure everyone else is getting what they want and your family's getting what they need.
Yeah. 5.5. What's your son's name?
Lincoln.
Cool name.
Yeah.
So, okay, you went to high school. You were in Kings Cove. Was that the high school was in Kings Cove?
K to 12.
What was the high school?
St. Mark's.
Yeah. Not familiar with it. Being a young man who grew up in the East End and still lives in the East End, You can say what you want about that. Now, I have traveled the island, so I do know a good bit about it, but I do not know that. But so, okay, you graduate high school. You go to Memorial University.
Yeah.
Did you go directly into the business program?
Yeah. I guess first year, whatever that looked like, and then right into the program.
So tell me a little bit about that. I had my own experience there, good and bad. But tell us a little bit about that experience and how it shaped you.
It was great, honestly. Like, I enjoyed university. I think at that point, though, I'm 17, moving away from the Bay, and I would say I was like, half cultured. It's not like I wasn't familiar being in the city or anything, and I look forward to that, to be honest. But getting out on your own at 17 and operating your own household, we'll say. It's a lot, and I never really got caught up in the work thing while going to university, because I really wanted to focus on school and getting through that as best I could, of course. And business school is great. And met a lot of great people and still friends with.
Well, I tell you right now, I can tell by listening to you, you had an advantage. At 17, you're out on your own learning about what it is to run a household. I didn't have that. I went to Mon, lived with my mom. Absolutely. God bless her. She gave me everything. But it was pretty easy for me.
I
right?
I worry about that with Lincoln. I mean, what's it going to look like when he's over? You hear all the stories where they're with you till they're 30.
Yeah. Well, I made the mistake of telling my 15-year-old I was 29 before I moved out.
The bar set.
My wife hates that story, and I'm not going to edit it out. But so you're in university, you get your degree.
Yep.
And you come out with a Bachelor of Commerce. Did you concentrate in anything?
Not really. The entrepreneurial piece and the finance piece, and I'll say finance, the investment side, is kind of what piqued my interest. So I've done most of the courses that I could do in that, but there was no focus as such, like accounting or HR or anything. As I was saying to your son earlier, I just found that I was a bit more independent, and going through the program, there was nothing that really spoke to me in terms of like the work term side or whatnot, that I was like, this is what I want it to be. Yeah. I guess maybe just my background always, like, my father never worked for anyone as such. He always worked for himself, and that's all I knew. So it's kind of the way I wanted it to be, just not fishing.
Thanks, Cyril, for shaping this man. So yeah, you come out of university, and what was your first role? You remember that? Broker. I'm sure you do. So you went straight into being a broker.
Basically, yeah. I took a little bit of time off. Well, like I said, where mom was sick at the time. If I recall, I think I might have fished a little bit that summer. Yeah. Because there was planning we were going to move away shortly after. But no, right into the business.
So when I met you, would have been 95, 96, 97, 98, something like that?
No? I'd say it was 2010.
2010. Yeah. Wow. 2010. Yeah. Okay, because what year did you graduate from?
2008, which is shortly
2008.
after.
Yeah, you're a young pup compared to me. I came out of business in 1993. So you come out of business school, you go right into being a broker.
Yeah.
I have my experience being a salesperson in the advertising world, and it was scary. Yeah. What were you feeling? What got you going? Your day one. You don't have a clue what you're doing. Let's be honest, right?
I say to people all the time, I didn't know if a mortgage was fit to eat. Didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
But I was in a good place at the time. I was very supportive, of course. And I think the education thing was the big thing for me. Again, I was 22, 23, and trying to tell people that were 50 what they should do with their finances, you know, and I found that intimidating, to be honest.
Yeah.
The one thing I kept reminding myself is that this is what I study. I've got my business degree. This is what I eat, breathe, sleep now. So I am the expert, or will work on becoming the expert. You know, I think they say after 10,000 hours, you've kind of mastered your field, whatever that may be. So just put in the time and the hours to get there as quick as I could.
Coming to you from the islands of Atlantic Canada, Gale Force Winds is a podcast anchored in optimism. Join us for a positive conversation every Tuesday on galeforcewins.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Co-owners and creators Gerry Carew and Alan Dale are seasoned communicators and business development experts. Together, they provide an elegant intersection of quality, speed, and affordable pricing in your media campaign. To learn more, visit galeforcewins.com.
So you're, you know, for the salespeople, and this is a very, very business-oriented business podcast. It's, you have quotas as your first month. You're looking at it. You got X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
Would it go by dollars or people, or how would you guys?
Yeah, normally files, volume is kind of how our business is kind of articulated.
Yeah.
You know, number of files, volume kind of depends on how you measure it. But
yeah. And how did you? The salesperson in me is really going to dig in a little bit here now. Like in terms of, like, it's one thing for me. I was business to business closing, you know, business deals where I'm reaching into a business person's pocket and advertising budget. Everyone needs a house as well, but you know, closing an individual without pissing them off. How do you, how again, there's a fine line there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the motto that I've always had, and I guess it's what drives you every day, is you work for the referral, not for the commission.
Right.
You know? And I've kind of preached that to everyone on the team that, you know, yes, this is how we get paid. Obviously, everyone's got their own personal goals, what they want to make and where they want to be in life and all that. And that's very individualistic, and it's up to them. But ultimately, you can't get caught up in getting a deal done or a fall done for a client for the sake of getting it done if it's not in the best interest of them.
Yeah.
Because it's very transactional at that point. You'll never hear from them again. It's a small town, it's a small city, it's a small province, and you know, word travels fast, as you know, twice as fast if it's bad. So
you're out of school. You're a mortgage broker. You always wanted to be on your own business person. You kind of are as a mortgage broker, aren't you?
You're still independent, regardless.
Yeah. At what point do you now become, because I think you were with another company at one point, so just talk a little bit about that and the transition, I guess, to that company and then to being the broker owner.
Yeah, again, like I said, I was an individual agent for, I think it was 6 years, and then I started out my own brand under the same network, again, with the plan of hoping to get other people with me that wanted to do it, you know. Same age, same mindset, same plans, you know. And then, like I said, currently with East Coast, the two previous owners had approached me at the time, and honestly, it was just a good fit, good people. It was obviously a great brand, culturally a great fit for me, and we had just had Lincoln. And
they approached you to join their company, not to be an owner at this point, not yet.
Yeah, to be an owner.
To be an owner right off the bat.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what, it's probably a good move for me personally. Like I said, Lincoln was just born at the time. Not probably realizing what I was getting into commitment-wise and time-wise, especially where I was so used to working day and night all the time, you know. And I just thought at that point that having that extra support and just network of other brokers around that could help if something came up. If I was on vacation, who knows what life was going to bring at that point. So yeah, it was just a great fit.
The decision to do that move, though, day, week, month, 2 months, like what's going on between you and your wife at this point? Because you're now becoming an owner, and how many people are working with you?
We've got 32 altogether. 33 actually. Yeah.
Big responsibilities. One thing to have clients. Now you got clients and 32 staff. So talk us through that a little bit.
Asked the guys at the time, and it was a painful process because I'm I won't say indecisive, very analytical. Right, so I'm just looking at every possible scenario, and you know, you're giving up your autonomy doing your own thing to go partner with others that, now a couple of people have got an opinion on what transpires. I'm sure my wife was like, just make a decision. At that point, she 100% she was, because she tells me that all the time. And again, the guys were very patient. They work with me, but I didn't rush into any decision by no means. It was a few months for sure.
Well, it's funny you talk like that, because I've had a job as a business development guy, but on the side I had what I call myself as a semipreneur. So I was a sole proprietor for 33 years. Now I'm in a partnership with Alan. Right. We have a really, really great partnership. But I think I've had to work hard to compromise, right, because I've been on my own for so long. Now I have someone else that we have to consider, and I think business is about compromising a lot of times, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And my partner now, Deanne, we work really well together. We're at two different points in our lives, and we're also two different people. So it's a bit of yin and yang there, I think, which balances it out pretty good.
I agree with you 100%, because if you're about the same, exactly the same, it'd be a little bit boring, and you might make mistakes. And
yeah, that's right. It'd be a lot harder to make decisions, I think.
Yeah.
Right, I'm glad that we're both not super analytical in that sense. We kind of balance each other out for anything that needs to happen, especially if it needs to happen quickly.
Yeah. So now when you came in, you had two other business partners.
There was four.
Now it's two. Two of you.
Yeah, that's right.
Two of you are running the ship, 32 people with you.
Yeah. Like I said, one person had retired, the other person still on as a great broker, still working with us. Just I didn't want the responsibility, and I can really appreciate that, because, like I said, there's definitely two hats.
Yeah. So at this point, for those who don't know, talk a little bit about what it is that a broker does. What I think there's probably a lot of misconceptions out there, and educating people is probably a big thing. So take some time to just talk a little bit about how you would help an individual.
Yeah, great question. And like I said, we get that quite a bit, and there's a lot of misconceptions, especially over the years, And on our side of things, it's a little bit different. So, generally, if someone's looking for a mortgage, naturally you kind of go to your bank, because anytime you want money, you go to your bank, Our case is a little bit different, and, we're independent, so we don't work for any particular financial institution. We've got a network of banks and credit unions and lenders and trust companies and so on. And for us, it's about the client. The client experience, of course, and making sure that the client gets what they're looking for. If you go to one particular lender, they've got one box that you fit, and that's it. Whereas our case, we've got numerous boxes. So yes, you might fit in 5, but which is the best one for that client based on their financial situation, whatever that case may be. And that's ultimately our job, is to make sure the client's getting the best mortgage advice and product that they can get out there, rather than just taking what's handed to them, And as I said to you a moment ago, for us, it's the relationship and the referral, not just the transaction piece. So we're steady rip, just helping clients that we probably dealt with in the past 1 to 5, 10 years, and that's the big thing for us, is that we're always there for the client no matter what, right?
Well, I think I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience, and judge me as you will, but I've always used the bank, and probably hear that a lot. I will tell you, without mentioning the bank, the experience this time in the middle of COVID, frankly, was horrible. And I've been in sales and business development for 30 years.
You understand.
What I didn't get is why it went sideways so many times, and the communication was all mixed up, and this person was moving and that one was moving, and it was like, it was a difficult experience. I love hearing what you say, because I have a financial advisor that I can actually talk to every day. Right. He's not at the point where he's got so many clients that he can't handle them. So that personal touch, Leslie, is really important to me. In fact, there's times when when I got laid off in the car business, like having that guy to talk to, very important, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think you just hit the nail on the head. So a lot of times if someone's dealing with, we'll say, Bank A that you've always been with, that's great, but the person you're dealing with, that might change 5 times. So each time you're trying to picking up the pieces to familiarize themselves with your file. And it could always be a different piece of advice because, I mean, everyone interacts differently. Everyone's got a different opinion, I guess. Whereas on our end, it's me or my team or whatever the case may be, and we're always there. You know, and it's not like we've moved from being a broker this week to a different type of advisor the next, right?
I told you I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'm probably going to put you on the spot a little bit. If I was to ask you this question, well, not if, I'm going to, what would you tell an individual out there, what is the most important or several pieces of important information that they should know around the industry that you're in, mortgages and whatever? You know, I mean, rates are going up and down, well, mostly up, I guess. Yeah. So I guess, you know, dispel some of the confusion maybe. What would people need to know?
I think from an industry perspective is that historically brokers or people that you went to if you couldn't get approved at a bank or whatever the case may be, and that's certainly not the case. You know, we all have a bank, and I've never had a bank mortgage product because there's always been a better product and rate that's out there. So I would say that really we're the specialists rather than the generalists for mortgage financing, where you just get generally better rates and better results. That's probably one of the biggest things that people have that misconception on. And no one has to pay us. I'll say there's caveats to that, like certain products and certain situations, but generally whatever bank or lender we place a client with, they just pay us a referral fee.
Interesting.
Yeah. A lot of people don't. The first question they get, how do we pay you? But generally the bank or lender, I mean, they don't have, we'll say, a sales force or a staff, so they don't have to worry about that. They just pay it on an individual basis, you know. And rate isn't everything. The first question you get from people is, what's your best rate? What rate can I get? Yeah. There's probably 20 questions we got to ask before we can get to the point of discussing rate, and the rate is only part of the equation, you know. And I always use the analogy, it's like going to a car lot, which you'd probably appreciate, and saying what's your cheapest payment, and it's a two-door coupe, and they need a truck. So you're getting the cheapest payment, but it's no good for your work business that you need a truck for.
I love that, what you just outlined. Being price comes up a lot in business, and you're right. Get me to the bottom line. What's the cheapest thing you got here? Well, really? You know, and I will tell you, when I was starting out in business, I always found it a struggle to guide the person to the more expensive options.
Right, yeah.
But you're right. If you're in the client's best interest, well, you know what? It's $1,000 versus $500, but that $1,000 is what you need, right?
Yeah.
And I guess shame on me if I can't articulate it.
Right, true enough. But I mean, like, you know, obviously, as you said, rates have been going up. Luckily, fixed have been kind of on the downward slide here lately. Hopefully that continues. But, you know, the difference in 0.05 or 0.1% in a rate is negligible if it means it's a completely wrong product for someone. Yeah. You know.
With respect to, you alluded to it a little bit, you know, you're talking about mortgages. It's just the mortgage product. Is it? Or do you get into a person's financial guidance? Do you give them some guidance as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's relatively holistic, but honestly, we're a big fan of staying in our own lane. You know, I'm not the one to give financial advice as such, but that's where our network comes into play. I've got all these people in my network, so if you need to talk to someone about X, Y, or Z, you're not on your own. I can put you in the hands of the right people, whether it be an accountant or a financial advisor or an insurance planner or whatever that looks like for that person. Yeah. Right.
In terms of trends within St. John's, is there anything that you can share with people? Like what's happening in terms of maybe do you talk about like house types, or are you into that kind of data? Is there any data that I know you've got some videos you're putting out, but what kind of data is out there that you would talk about and direct people to?
Yeah, I think right now, I mean, the media, there's a lot of, I'll say, negativity around the rates in the market and sales prices and sales activity, you know, plummeting. But it's all relative. You know, our market here is a bit of an anomaly, and thankfully it's been going well. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was out in Alberta for meetings with other top broker owners across the country. And when I had these conversations with these other people about how our market's doing, they're flabbergasted because they're down 30 and 40%. And here, luckily, like I said, our market has proven to be pretty resilient so far. Our home prices as well. Rates have gone up, but as I said, it's a 2% increase in rates is a lot more manageable on an average $320,000 purchase than what a lot of these people are dealing with at $1.5 million and $2 million. So it's all relative, right? And that's why I always say to people, the news has a purpose, but also don't be afraid to dig in and just dive a bit deeper to see how it really impacts you as an individual here locally. And like we had a number of presentations from top economists from the banks and the insurers and those guys, and each one just showed how well our market was performing compared to everyone else.
Right? Fantastic.
Yeah.
There's nothing gets me excited more than hearing about Newfoundland doing well. Look, I want everyone to do well, but this incredible place that we've carved a living out of, the more that people do well, the better for all of us.
Yeah.
On that note, I'm going to talk about geography as a Bayman. Your words, not mine, okay? Am I allowed to say that? No. You did say it. What's your geography? Like, what's your coverage area for your brokerage?
We're based out of St. John's here, of course. We have brokers across the island, and we service pretty much across the country.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, you can go into other provinces too?
Yeah. So there are different ways to approach it depending on the licensing in certain provinces. Yeah. But and you know what? To your point, like COVID changed a lot of that, and changed a lot of the policies around, even digital signatures and stuff like that, which made it a little bit easier for sure.
Well, it's funny you say that. In the car business, signing off on a car had to be in person. Yeah. And it always drove me crazy. I don't know, I've been out of it since COVID. I would imagine that's changed.
Yeah.
The inconvenience, I remember there was a gentleman needed a cosign for his daughter. He was in Labrador.
Right.
And it was this administrative nightmare. So you're telling me now none of that matters. It's all those barriers are gone?
Yeah. And again, up to that point, up until March 2020, it was much the same. A lot of lenders didn't accept, like, we'll say DocuSign and different e-signature platforms, but they pivoted on that pretty quickly, and it stuck around, thankfully, and it just, it's a game changer for people.
Well, there's an awful lot of challenge that came out of the pandemic, but I tell you, listening to you talk and just breaking through barriers, administrative bullshit, drives me crazy. Yeah. The fact that you guys now have pivoted and that's, DocuSign works, that's customer service, right?
100%. So, even yesterday I had a conversation with a client, him and his wife, 2 kids, both kids in hockey. They don't have time to breathe. And the fact that we just got on a quick phone call for 15 minutes, went through the details, he was like, you saved me a trip from CBS, me and my wife and 2 kids, and they can make it hockey practice on time. And he was like, it's changed since the renewal, 5 years ago.
It's funny, do you meet, so you'll meet with clients virtually as well, right?
Yeah, basically whatever the client prefers.
Yeah.
Phone, Zoom, in person.
It's funny, being in business development for 30 years, a handshake's incredibly important, but the ability to, you're sitting in my office here, and I've worked down here for 3 years straight now, and the ability to actually get on a Zoom call with someone, no matter where they are, the convenience as well. I love coffee shops because that's where I've made my living, and I joke that when we retire, so you work in a coffee shop, when you retire, you end up in a coffee shop, but when the pandemic opened, I'll never forget it, I was working for Newfound Marketing, and I had to meet someone, and they had restrictions on the number of seats. Went to Jumping Bean on Elizabeth Avenue, full. Went to Tim Hortons on Torbay Road, full. Finally got into Newfoundland Chocolate Company there in Torbay Road Mall. We were 45 minutes trying to get to sit together. And I had done, one day in particular, I did 12 Zoom meetings, and the efficiencies of it, but I think we all now are hybrid, Yeah,
that's a good word. Yeah, for us, it comes into client preference, of course, and a lot of time clients prefer the phone call or the Zoom meeting just because it's more convenient for them.
So Leslie, you're a broker owner. Let me ask you this: so what do you see in the future for you, for the brokerage? It's called a brokerage, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So. What do you see in the future?
A lot of growth, to be honest, and I guess from my partner and I, after the buyout last year, we focused on that. The big thing for us has always been the happiness of the agent, you know.
Yeah.
And whether they want to do huge volume and that's what makes them happy, or if they want to do a little bit because, you know, they want to spend half their summer at the cabin, whatever that looks like for them, we're just there to support them. So we're not huge in terms of, you know, you've got to hit certain thresholds. If not, you know, you're not part of the team. Yeah. We want to help nurture them, whatever that looks like for them, of course, but also being there to be able to support their business, you know. But there's still a lot of potential. I mean, the market here is huge. Yeah. And, you know, as I said a moment ago, a lot of people still go to other banks. So our, we'll say, competition are the banks that people just naturally gravitate towards. And there's still a lot of value to add to people's personal finances. So I think that's going to be a big part of it for us in terms of, you know, expansion and growth.
Well, I think I'll tell you this, you know, as a business guy who craves customer service, I know I will be going to you guys in the future. So a few years from now, because we've locked in. But anyway, one last thing we always do on this podcast is ask what a piece of advice. There's lots of people that are watching this, many seasoned business professionals, but there's some young people starting in various industries. Looking back over your career, what advice would you give someone who's listening?
I think what served me well, as you alluded to in the beginning, is the work ethic is important. I mean, you got to show up every day, you know, and again, not to tell anyone what a schedule should look like, but you really got to make that commitment, you know. I think that's a big thing. Nothing comes easier with it to work, as I'm sure you see with, you know, all the work you guys have put in the past several years. But then the flip side of that is a balance piece. I've seen too many people that have, you know, older than me and not much older than me, have gone through and they've worked incredibly hard and incredibly successful, and then their health changes or something happens with a family member. Yeah. And it's like, you can't get that time back. So it's funny, I was saying to a buddy of mine last night that, you know, I've been at this now a little over 15 years. And I feel like I should be retired, but I still got 20, 30, 40 years left, hopefully. Yeah. But I think it puts it in perspective in terms of, you know, obviously wanting to be successful, whatever that looks like for that individual, and putting the work in for that, but also having the right people around you to help support you. And take time to enjoy it, because you never know what's going to happen.
Well, I'm going to say this. I really appreciate you coming on with me today. You certainly have someone I've been watching, you know, on LinkedIn. Go to Leslie's LinkedIn page, and we'll have a link in this to it. But you're posting some videos there periodically, which I think are very helpful. You know, I'm going to say this. This is an example. You are an example of someone who has come from a small community, guided by a hard work ethic. I can't wait to meet you, Cyril. This boy here, I would imagine you are very proud of. And I think just, you know what, Leslie, keep doing what you're doing. Keep guiding those 32 souls at that business and moving them forward, because this province needs more Leslie Penney.
Appreciate your time.
It's got to be fun. It's got to be intriguing for me to be at it.
Every single time something happens, I say, there's no way this is taking me out. This isn't the day.
My analogy to everybody is we need to work together here.
When you have a belief as an entrepreneur, you kind of stick to that belief, because hope is everything. And, you know, it's the future ambition that will always fuel you.
You can do what we do here.
Love your family. Learn from your family.
Don't take yourself too seriously.
Live in the moment. But nothing compares to being, you know, with my kids.
In March of 2021, Gale Force Winds was aboard HMCS Harry de Wolf in the Turks and Caicos. We were lucky enough to meet Charles Chuck Frolot. From that moment on, Chuck has been our mentor and guiding us. In July of 2023, we brought Chuck to St. John's, Newfoundland, and he gave a presentation titled This Much I Know. this is that presentation.
I have just a few things to say. I met Gerry and Alan about a year ago on the HMS De Wolf in Turks and Caicos, and I was blown away by their humor and authenticity, optimism, and the quality of their work product. And we've been working together since, and it's like we're old pals of a lifetime. And today, and this is my first time in Newfoundland. Now, I'm born and raised in northern New Brunswick, so there's no excuse for this being my first time here. But I have traveled the world a bit and lived and worked in 4 countries. And over the 4 decades, I have come up with observations, and I want to leave you with 5 of them today. It's not going to take me very long to do that. I've had them printed, actually, so if you forget, you can I just put them on the table perhaps for after? I do not own the truth, and I have not co-authored the Bible, but there are observations of mine that have come up along the way in my years of experience, and it is my hope and expectation that one thing I say will resonate with you. Now, that might be something different for each person, but my hope and expectation is that one thing I say may cause you to do something differently, or have you cease and desist on something you're doing, or treat the way you're working or dealing with your professional career. And if I can succeed in that, then it's been a great success. I'm really here because Gerry promised me that he would take my speech and go viral. And I'd have worldwide fame after. And so I asked him this afternoon how he planned on doing that. And he said, well, in St. John's, anything more than 10 is viral. So,
you reach tens of people.
On with the show. Okay, my first observation, ladies and gentlemen, this is called This Much I Know, Lessons from My Corporate Journey. And if we could have the first. Bill Gates coined it a few years ago, and I love the phrase, busy is the new stupid. About 40 years ago, I was living and working in Ottawa, and at a company called Combustion Engineering, which is a large engineering company, no longer exists. And it got gobbled up along the way by an even larger predator. But we had an office boy in the days when you had office boys. He would push his cart along the various floors of the MetLife building at 99 Bank Street in Ottawa. And I would run into him, and I'd say, and he was a bit of a character, and his stories were always exaggerated. And he'd say, I'm busy, I'm awful busy. And I would suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that 40 years later, we've all caught up to Craig. Because we believe that unless we're besieged with text messages and emails and other forms of what I call digital confetti, that unless we are overburdened with meetings that, 80% of them are useless, that somehow we're not worthy. So if you came here tonight and you saw someone that you hadn't seen in a while, chances are, dollars to donuts, you ask them how work is, and they'd say, busy, really, really busy. And we're busy because of this thing, and it's distraction. And I can't tell you how many people I deal with today, that companies I deal with, that are in chaos because of the disruption caused by this technology. And so I'm going to give you a little formula to deal with that. But next. Yep. We're busy because we're distracted. It has nothing to do with our own sense of self-importance. And what happens when we're busy? It's disruption and chaos, correct? So far be it from me to tell a group of Newfoundlanders how a ship sinks, but I'm going to. A ship sinks in 2 ways, gradually and then all of a sudden. And that's the way it is in corporations as well, because initially the decline is imperceptible, and if you're not paying attention, you can lose the game. So a ship sinks in two ways. Next slide, Jerry. And so here's the equation. A well-run company, in my experience, spends 20% of its time in planning. It's about tomorrow's products, tomorrow's services, and new markets for those products and services, and it spends 70% of its time in what I call operations. And operations is baking the bread and selling the bread. And 10% of its time in reactionary. And when that is skewed, the results are not pretty. But what happens today because of technological disruption is the reactionary grows. Now you may say, well, why would you have 10% reactionary? Shouldn't it be zero? Well, yeah, in a perfect world it would be, but frankly, the world is not perfect. And so if the internet blows a gasket and the call center goes down, you're in a reactionary mode. Or if you're waiting for a component part from Central Canada to assemble something for a key customer, and that's delayed because of transportation issues, you're in a reactionary mode. So what happens is the reactionary mode grows, and in the operations side, they steal it from the planning side, so there's very little planning going on. And you're dealing with an operating environment that's being cannibalized by the reactionary. My second point to you, ladies and gentlemen, is that progress often masquerades as trouble. Oftentimes in companies, as in life, we deal with issues and we believe, if we're implementing change especially, that we have to back off. And oftentimes, unless you are going east and looking for a sunset, chances are your strategy is correct. Chances are you've road tested your strategy. And so if that's the case, really expect pushback, because there's going to be pushback to your strategy. And next slide, please. Just expect that pushback and stay the course. So progress often masquerades as trouble is my second, and my third is the beautiful energy begets energy. I would suggest to you that something magical begins to happen when you take action. Something magical begins to happen when you take action. I was dealing with a friend recently who was frustrated because she had started a career search and wasn't getting traction, and her activity had slowed down. And I said, well, you got to get back networking, and she did. And the magical thing about it is that the activity that came about didn't come from the networking she was doing. It came from somewhere else in the universe. So energy begets energy, and something magical begins to happen when you put energy into the environment. And the other thing I would suggest to you related to that is that you don't need to feel good to get rolling. Actually, motivation follows practice. Some people think I'm going to get motivated before I go to the gym. It doesn't work that way. You go to the gym to get motivated, is my third message. And then optimism and the importance of picking your tribe. I saw a lot of optimism this week in St. John's at two conferences. And there is nothing more important to economic development than a culture of optimism. Many years ago, a friend of mine had been appointed Czar of Economic Development in northern New Brunswick, and he had invited an industrialist in, and he had invited all the luminaries and dignitaries of this little region to dinner. And the industrialist had a manufacturing facility looking to locate somewhere in the country. And it was a coup for my buddy just to be able to attract this guy. And so that night, over dinner and the drinks flowed, there was a fair bit of cynicism came out. And at one point, the industrialist says to one chap, he said, "Tell me about your transportation system." And the guy says, "Oh, you wouldn't drive your car over these roads. You'd lose it." And at the end of the night, the chap went up to my buddy and he said, "Bill, I'm sorry. It's just not going to work." And so what I would suggest to you, that with the optimism that I'm seeing and feeling on the island here, is keep the naysayers at home. Because nothing will kill like pessimism. And related to that is what I call choose your tribe carefully. 25 years of research at Harvard University, David McClellan found that the strongest and most enduring correlation of your success was with what? It wasn't your rugged good looks. It was not how much money daddy or mommy had. And it wasn't your math degree from Memorial University. The strongest correlation with your success was who you hung out with. So when your mother told you at 7 years old not to hang out with the Watson kids, she was right. But we tend to believe that that was only for 7-year-olds because they don't have powers of discernment. I'm here to tell you that that's as equally as true for adults, 7 or 70. So pick your tribe carefully and change your tribe. And if, well, I don't give divorce counseling, so I can't, that's a whole other kettle of fish. I won't go there. And lastly, I want to leave you with this, altruism. I go back to my initial business, or busy as the new stupid. There is an untold amount of stress and strain and anxiety and depression today in the world. And I was, up until the end of March, chairing NB Power, the energy utility in New Brunswick. And I remember a couple of years ago asking to look at the long-term disability stats, and I was quite startled at the number of people who were out on anxiety-related, stress-related illnesses. And it's a fact that we are dealing with untold amount of anxiety and stress and depression. And so they asked His Holiness the Dalai Lama what the antidote to that would be, what he would recommend for the anxiety and depression in the world today. And he said altruism, do something for somebody else, and it takes your mind off your own ailments. And he is right. Simon Sinek said that you go into a bookstore and there's a huge section on self-help, but there's nothing for helping others. Now, actually, Newfoundlanders have this, and you have this in spades. You demonstrated it at in Gander and Stephenville on 9/11, and you demonstrated it more recently with the tragedy with the submersible off to the Titanic. And actually, on 9/11, I was working in England, and I had 2 colleagues in the air coming to Connecticut, to our subsidiary there, and they were diverted to Stephenville. I remember they called in later that day, and I said, "Richard, there's only 2 things to do in Stephenville, and in the winter you can't fish." The last story I will tell you on this one has to do with paying it forward, and it's all related to altruism and giving back. Leo Buscaglia, the great humanist and former professor at the University of California, I believe it was, and prolific author on issues of love and philosophy and all kinds of good things like that. As a young man in the 1960s, graduated from university with a doctorate, and he decided to see a bit of the world, and so he slung a backpack over his shoulder and he toured the world, and he ended up in Hong Kong. And like Otis Redding in the great song in the 1960s, sitting on the dock of the bay, there he was in Hong Kong. And he was approached by a small Asian man who had a Cantonese to English dictionary. And the chap came up to him and asked him a question. And they got talking. And the gentleman, Mr. Wong, asked him where he was staying. And Leo Buscaglia said, well, he really wasn't sure. He was going to try and find a youth hostel. And so the gentleman convinced him to come home with him. And so Leo Buscaglia followed the gentleman home. And he found out that he lived in a flat, a rather small flat, with 7 children. And for the week he stayed with him, this family gave him all they had and more. And as a token of his deep appreciation at the end of the week, Leo Buscaglia enrolled Mr. Wong in a English as a second language course at the American University in Hong Kong. And he came back to America and he went on with his life teaching at the University of California. And almost 3 years to the day, he received a package in the mail. And it was from Mr. Wong, who said, Dr. Buscaglia, I am deeply grateful, and I want to inform you that my English has greatly improved. And I got a new job, and I'm a teller in the bank, and my family's doing great. And I'm returning the money you spent on my English course. So Buscaglia was moved to tears. I mean, you talk about character. That man had nothing. He didn't have a pot to you-know-what in. And here he had saved up in $1960. I don't know what it would have been, but it was probably a few $100s. And he was returning it. So Buscaglia sat down and he wrote a letter back and he said, Mr. Wong, I'm delighted to hear from you, and I'm so proud of what you have done, and I'm delighted to hear of your job, but I can't accept your money. And so I am suggesting that you take it back to the dock of the bay and you find someone less well off than you are, and one by one we'll change the world. So altruism is alive and well in Newfoundland. This is not a lecture. It's a reinforcement of what you all do, I think, by nature. But it's incredibly important in today's world. It's a world of a bit of craziness and a bit of disruption, but it's made all the better by this endearing human quality. So thank you for your attention and for having me. And this arguably has to be the most beautiful view any bar in Canada would have at the foothills of Signal Hill and looking out into the Narrows. So thank you. I have my 5 points up here on the card, and enjoy the rest of our little networking event. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Wins Season 2 on Rogers TV, where we focus on conversations with leaders, business owners, and change makers that inspire. Please tune in next week.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
If you have a comment about this program, we